All right, back at your old build plate. Got a new, kind of excited about this project. And this is 4 pieces of the very top of a R5D4 that I'm fixing to start making. He's the red and white droid that Luke and Owen bought first from the Jawas and that popped his parts. And this is half of the top, very top of his head. I still got to print out the other half. This is going to be a pretty long project with a lot of printing. Real torture test for the printer. But I have full confidence in it. All right, time to clean them up. Get my other 4 pieces to the top of the dome. Right, more pieces just off of the printer. These are the pie pieces that are going to go into the pie dome for my R5D4. These are the little hatch doors that go on there. They've got this big tab on the side so that you can glue them on the end from the bottom, but I'm going to cut that off and I'm going to make these where they'll flip open whenever I install them. But for now, I got to clean them up. Motivator parts. And since it's for an R5, you know it's bad. All right. This is all of those. This is all 8 of the pieces for the top. I've already glued it together, and for some reason that I still am unsure of, I did not record me doing it. But this is the finished product, and as you can see, it's got a hole in the middle of it, and it's got a few little gaps at the edges and stuff. But I'm gonna take this putty, this body putty, and I'm just gonna skim coat this whole thing and then sand it. But since I didn't, before I do that, since I didn't film me putting this together, I'll at least tell you how I did it. They're numbered 1 to 8, and I went clockwise, which may be the wrong direction, but that would just be right for my project. Probably turn out that I would have had to have gone counterclockwise, but I went clockwise. Now whether or not that's going to make a difference, I don't know. But I used crazy glue and this glue to glue it together. I mean, they're both basically the same, the exact same adhesive. And I've got this Insta set too, so that whenever you put this crazy glue on there, it sets fast, but it doesn't truly set up for, it takes a minute or two, especially whenever you use a lot of it, like is on these seams here. So what you want to do is, as soon as you can, as quickly as you can, of course you only want to work one at a time. You want to get them nice and aligned, and I use these little clips here to help me hold it. I'd get it there, and you want to wear gloves while doing this or you'll stick your fingers together. Trust me, don't ask me how I know that, but trust me, I do know that. All right. Anyways, So what I did is how I fit these things together is, first of all, I noticed that I happened to notice that this plate here, this paper plate, was dished just right for at the size that I printed this, which I'm doing mine at 65%. And at the size that I did this plate was just right, and the angle on it, or the lip on it, was just high enough where I could line these up around that paper plate and get just about the right angle on it to line all my pieces up. So then I got them kind of halfway. I got at least one of them on. I worked one piece at a time. I didn't do the whole, but I laid it out there first, okay? So I used that clip on that, and I'd get this, and I'd take my fingernail and run it across that joint. And when I could not feel that seam there, I mean, you can feel it whenever whenever one is higher than the other one, just by running your fingernail across it like that. And whenever you can't feel the seam, then you've got them aligned right. That's whenever you take your glue and just put a few dabs in there and let it seep down in that joint right there, and then you take your Instaset and it's there. All right, and you know, and if you line this up, the rest of it will take care of itself. You know, and you just keep that going all the way around until you're done with it. I mean, and then you'll have to glue your middle pieces as well. But anyway, I took my time with it as much as I could, but I don't care how much time you take and how patient you are. You're never going to get it just, you know, dead square on. I mean, we're humans. Okay, it's hard for us to line that up and get it just perfect every time. Okay, but I got it as close as I could, and I closed up all of the gaps as well as I could. But, you know, there's still going to be a few little rough spots. Plus, whenever you're printing these things out, of course, occasionally one of your prints will have a little deviation in it, or some type of imperfection that, or something like that right there that's got to be filled anyway. So, you know, plus even this resin stuff, even though you can't really feel the lines like that, if you run your finger over it, you can feel them that way. So you know that's going to show up in paint. So you've got to sand this thing, plus you're going to want to use some body filler. So what I'm going to do, now that I've got all that done, is I'm going to take this body putty, and I'm going to cover this, and I'm just going to do a skim coat all over this whole thing. I'm going to fill this hole up. I'm going to put a little extra in the middle here on this back part so that I'll have some type of a backing in there, so that whenever I fill this hole up, it won't just be hanging out and nothing. I'll have a nice larger spot on the bottom to back it all up with, and it'll get down in all of these cracks and go in all of the uneven spots. The only hole I don't want to fill up is this one right here, because that's where the antenna goes. But I want to catch all of these little spots along the edge too. And then once I get it covered with the putty, then and let it dry, which also this plate's going to come in handy as a little drying spot where I can just then put it down on top of it and let it dry without touching anything. So if it sticks to anything, it'll stick to the plate while it's drying. I can handle that. And then once it dries, I'll have to start sanding. All right, now I'm going to try for that. I'm going to film that, and I'm going to try my first time-lapse video to see if I can do a time-lapse. All right, so, and I've also got these, I've almost forgot, I also got these printed out, which are these go in here. But what I'm going to, this has a tab on it so that you can glue it right here on the bottom. And then you can just glue it like that for a static display piece. But I don't want a static display piece. I want these things to flip open, and I want there to be stuff in there. Okay, so in order to do that, I'm going to have to cut this. I'm going to have to cut this tab off. But I'm also going to use pieces of that tab. I'm going to cut the tab into pieces so that I can then glue a little piece here, just to have a little bit of a lip out, so that whenever the door closes, it'll catch there and it won't go any further. It won't go in. You know, it'll bam, it's there and it's level with the top, and it looks like it's supposed to. And I might even do a small one back here in the back to catch the back side of it. But these also need to be, I mean, they've got some spots in them where you can see where the print got off a little bit from the positioning of the thing, and they almost all have some lines and stuff in there that need to be, just little imperfections that need to be, yeah, that one's got just a dip in it right there, a line through it, and that needs to be filled. So I'm going to have to skim coat these too. And straighten them out, sand them up, get them all nice and smooth so that they're ready to install in there. And then I'm going to have to cut these tabs off too. So got a little bit of work to do on this. Right now, currently, my antenna's printing, so I don't have that to go on there yet, but I will later. So yeah, it's a process. But while I'm printing one, I can be putting others together. But I've also got some other smaller parts printed. I've got my two side rods printed, which these came printed halves, and then you had to super glue them back together, and getting those to line up perfect is pretty challenging, but I did as well as I could, and then I can sand and fill or whatever I got to do to make it look, you know, spot on. But that's about where I am right now. So my next step is to do the body putty on the dome pie. So here we go. All right, while I was waiting on my camera to charge, I went ahead and puttied up the inside of the top of the pie dome to fill in that hole right there and kind of fill in any of the cracks in the bottom best I could, and hopefully even get a little better adhesion there with the putty on it. Okay, also got my little hatch doors over here puttied up and drying. I had to flip them. The tops were starting to dry out, but the bottoms were still wet, so I had to flip them so the bottoms could dry as well. I'll probably have to flip them again here in a little bit, but for now I'm going to try that time-lapse video puttying the whole outside of it, because I figure it's easier to just go ahead and just putty everything, and then whenever that dries, start sanding, and whenever you get down to the yellow, you know you're getting it smooth. But I'm going to go through a couple of different grits of sandpaper. I'm going to probably start out with go over it real quick, just a quick hit and knock down all the big stuff with a 80 grit, and then switch over to a 120, and then for my final sand, before primer, I'll probably do a 180, and then after I prime it and that dries, then I'll probably go back and wet sand it with some 400 and then probably some 1200 or some 1500 or something like that. But anyways, I'm about to make my first time-lapse video. Here we go. All right. Now, everything is covered completely. Another reason you want to do this before you start sanding, this stuff's going to shrink too, so you want to let it cure good before you ever sand it the first time. And then you sand it, retouch any areas that may need it, but whenever you go over it this thorough, you're probably going to wind up with less areas that need to be retouched. Oh, and this right here, I found a little eraser that fit the antenna hole perfectly. So once I drug the putty over that hole, I just took this pencil eraser and shoved it up through that hole, and it cleaned the hole out perfectly. So no excess putty down in there. So that was cool. That was a little hack there. That so you might want to try. Just find something that'll fit the hole perfect, and then it'll clean it out for you right off the bat. But now I just got to let it cure, and then I can start sanding. I'm going to do another time lapse. Alright, I got a few parts just off the printer, and I cured them with my new UV lamp, which was awesome because it's nighttime here, so there's no sun to put them in, so I'd have had to wait until tomorrow to do this. But I'm just gonna go ahead and make another little video of me putting a few little parts together. This is the antenna for R5D4, and I've got a motivator over here, and since it's for an R5 unit, you can bet it's bad. But it's got these two components are actually 2 pieces each, and I got to glue those together. And then I've got to glue this up here, and I got to glue this on here, and this. And thing about it is, I don't think I reduced this piece quite enough whenever I open the file in Cheetah Box, because it doesn't fit the spot. So it's a little bit big. So like I said, this motivator is going to be bad right off the bat because I've messed up the piece, but I'm going to use it anyway. Even if it is a little big, who's going to know, right? Well, whoever watches this video will know. That's who'll know. And I'll know, but hey, I don't care. I ain't redoing it. At least it's not on this one. Maybe on the next one I'll redo the file. All right. So what I do whenever I have a two-piece part is I try to get it as close to fitting together perfectly as I can, and I clamp it with one of these little clamps here. And I've already done that with these just to save a little time. And also, I think I'm going to try another time-lapse video. I did one. It was alright, but I only wound up with 3 seconds of footage. But it was still pretty cool. So I'll adjust my settings and try it again. Alright, so I got these things glued together finally, and looking pretty good. Just need to sand them up and they'll be ready to prime and paint. I don't think I'm going to need anything on them, but just kind of do a little detailing. This one really, I don't even have to do anything but paint then. And that thing, this is the R5 motivator, and I can just tell by looking at it, this thing just gonna blow at any second. It's just, these things are notoriously bad, and this one's no exception. It's gonna be bad and it's gonna blow. So I hate it, but you're looking at a bad part, brand new bad part. All right, on to the next job. All right, I'll let it set overnight and cure, so this is all good and dry, and so I know it'll be able to be sanded well. I got the old trusty sander here. Got some 80 grit on there to knock all this heavy stuff down, and then I've got some 120 grit to get it a little smoother, and then a little 180 to get it even smoother than that. All right, so, but I'm not going to make you watch it real time, so I'm going to time lapse it again. So here we go. All right, now that I got my initial sanding out of the way, now I can see where my low spots are in my body filler. You see all of these dark spots in here. All of that's low spots in the body filler. So I've got to go back and I've got to redo all of that. I've got to put a little bit, I've got to spot check this. And I got a little bit of a crack right there, but that should be all right. But all of those low spots now have to be filled. So you gotta kind of sand check, and backfill. I washed it real good so that I could make sure and see everything that I needed to touch up, and it worked really well. It's worked really well so far. I still need to put a little bit more in a few spaces, but like I said, it's a process. Don't expect to do it in one shot, is all I'm saying. I mean, if you want to do it right. Now, if you just want to print out parts, stick them together and say, hey, I got this robot I made, and then, hey, that's cool too, because that's a lot more effort than a lot of other people went to. But if you want yours to stand out, the devil is, as they say, is in the details. So you got to get it nice and smooth and straight. It needs to look like it. I mean, this is 8 pieces, but it needs to look like it ain't but one piece. And that is the goal. That's why you put the body filler on it to begin with, so that you can fill in any little low spots and any seams and any of that, and it'll be completely invisible theoretically once the paint's on there. But if you leave those low spots in there, even though it feels pretty smooth to the touch, whenever you spray primer and paint on there, you'll see all of that. So now I'm about to go back and spot check it and fill in all of those. All right, there it is after redid all of the low spots. Now just got to let it dry and do a little resanding, and then we'll check for any other low spots. All right, now after 3 different spot checkings and a lot of sanding, we got it here, which is pretty smooth. I think I can finally go to primer now. But first I'm going to wash it with soap and water just to make sure and get any dust off of it and make sure it's dry, thoroughly dry. And then I can prime it. Now, of course, you probably don't have to go to that much trouble to smooth it out because there is some high build primers that'll fill in a lot of imperfections, but I feel that it's best to go ahead and get out as many imperfections as you possibly can before going to primer so that you don't have to rely on the primer to fill in everything. It's just for, you know, little minute stuff that you can't even hardly see, really. So I say get it as smooth as humanly possible first, and then go to priming. But that's about where we're at now. I'm almost ready to spray the primer. Just got to wash it, and then I'll prime it. Oops. And just before I prime and paint this antenna, I wanted to go ahead and show it one more time because since it was a two-piece, that seam around it all the way around was a deep groove, so I went ahead on and put some body putty in that too and sanded it nice and smooth so that hopefully once it gets primed and painted, it'll look like one solid piece of metal instead of two pieces of plastic glued together and painted to look like metal, which is actually what it is. But it's all about the illusion here. And this one I can actually prime and paint because there's nothing else that I need to do to it until it's ready to be glued into place on the dome. And there we are in the primer coat. I can still see a few flaws, but I can touch those up whenever it's attached to the dome, and I'm touching the whole dome up as one for the final, you know, once over before I go to paint. But for now, this will work because it's so close that it's a lot closer than a lot of other people would get it. Many other people probably let what few flaws is in there ride, but I don't know. We'll see how it works out. But it's now in primer, and now I can start on the next phase. Now, in theory, I can now cut the tabs off of these little parts here, these little hatch doors for my R5D4 project. Just buzz them off and leave this tab because I want to use this tab to make little door stops with. But I gotta take it off of there one way or the other because the door won't open with that on there. That's there so that you can glue it to the underside of the dome pie, but I don't want to do that. So anyway, I got this new scroll saw. I'm about to saw all of these off, and instead of doing it real time, I'm gonna speed that up a little bit so you don't have to watch all that. Well, after quite a bit of work and 3 coats of body putty, I think I'm finally ready to prime and paint. I went ahead and I beveled the inside front and back edges just to make sure that there wouldn't be no clearance issue whenever the hatch was opening and closing. I saw somebody else do that. I figured I might as well go ahead and do it too while I was doing it. But anyhow, after a lot of sanding, they're ready to go. Alright, so I couldn't stand it, and I went ahead and completely redid the dome pie. We way over sanded it with that power sander. There wasn't nearly enough filler on it, and then so I went back. I redid this. I recovered this thing 3 times with filler to get it just as smooth as it could possibly be. And I mean, you see how the whole surface, pretty much, except for right near the edges, is in places is where all the filler is. I mean, that's exactly what you need. You want it to fill them low places. If your edges are clear but the middle ain't, well, the middle was low. So, all right. So now I can go back and reprime this thing. All right. After I redid all of that bodywork, there are absolutely no seams showing anymore anywhere. If you didn't know this was 8 pieces glued together, you wouldn't know it. It's all very nice and smooth now. This is exactly how I need it. So now whenever I put it on the dome, the only thing I'll have to touch up anymore is the seam where I glued it together and did that body work. So, but the dome pie itself is good now. I like that a lot better. All right, let's get some more done to this. All right, so after a lot of work, there's a completed dome pie section. After completely redoing the dome once, I did that. Electric sander was just far too aggressive and took off way too much of the filler and left me with a lot of print lines and a lot of seams showing. And this is 8 different pieces making just this piece, but you only want it to look like one piece. You don't want any seam lines showing or anything like that. So I had to just completely go ahead and break down, redo the whole thing just so it would look right. And then of course I got all my hatch covers nice and smooth and whatnot. I sanded a couple of them thinking I was going to go ahead on paint them, but I think I'm going to hold off on painting them until the project is near completion, after I've already mocked up pretty much everything and got everything working and whatnot. Then I can disassemble and paint everything. So I'm going to leave the dome pie and the hatches like this for now. And I've also got my bad motivator to go with it. That's completed parts for the time being. Next time, we're going to work on building the dome. So stick around, like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.